Hey guys, welcome back to Eversoul. In today's video, we are going to go through a tier list for the game. Now, this is not created by me. This is on the Pridewind Discord. I've been chatting with Antilla from Discord, the guy who runs the site basically, for over the last couple of days. Like, the dude is actually really amazing at collating data and stuff like that. So this is going to be the global tier list for early game. Now, he has the disclaimers at the top of the website, but basically what he's done is this is basically from chapters 1 to 9. We've got solid data on from a bunch of people testing and stuff like that. And now he's going through 10, 11, 12 because that's where the spenders are starting to get stuck. And you got Giga Whales sort of around like chapter 16 sort of thing at the moment. So this tier lists are always subjective and people's views are going to be skewed on what they've used. Now, I'm going to go highlight more in depth the characters that I had input on when we were going through this stuff. The characters that I've tested more thoroughly and stuff like that. And then if you want to do a little read up, I think he's put a write up on each character as we go down. If you expand this, there's a write up on each character. If you want to go in depth into notes, he does fantastic notes. Once again, massive shout out to him. Does a really good job. Like I said, he's like got all these screenshots of like now it's on to 10-40 clears and stuff like that, or is it 35? Whatever, the last stage of chapter 10. He's collating all the data on units for that and stuff like that. So this will definitely evolve over time. And keep in mind, a bunch of these units that are down the bottom, it's just like they maybe need skill ups, artifacts, team synergies. It's just early game in these idle games is always a lot different to what the end game is. So I think that's enough disclaimers. Let's jump into it and start talking about the characters individually. And go through this tier list. The top like 3 tiers, I'm pretty happy with, and like these are the tiers of characters that I've tested pretty well. And then the lower tiers are just sort of, you know, just scatters around because I'm not too sure personally on my testing alone. But like I said, this has been data gathered from a lot of players. So pretty concise tier list for global. I may come in tomorrow and do a Korean tier list and take a look at the differences between that. But for now, let's kick it off with, first of all, we have Adrienne Angel, I call her. She's an absolute savage. So this SS tier is basically reserved for characters that are splashably good in just about any team, no matter what the circumstance, and most of them can do multiple things, or all of them can do multiple things. So Adrienne, basically, she's a defender, but it's kind of a lie because she can actually take a fair bit of damage, but she's a damage dealing healer is essentially what she does. She does a lot of damage, especially if you use her ult when enemies are grouped up. She can deal massive amounts of damage, but even without ulting, she does ridiculous damage. Now, keep in mind with her, she's a hard one to get dupes of, so she's going to fall off pretty quick unless you're a big spender and you get really lucky with the RNG and you get multiple copies of her. If I had to guess, eventually I'd say they'd implement a system similar to AFK Arena for getting angels and demons that's much more expensive on gems or premium currency, but we'll have to wait and see. But at the moment, she's absolutely godly for the early game. If you pull her in the first like 9 chapters, just use her, she's fine. Then we have Petra. Now Petra's ridiculous because she's probably the best tank in the game, and the thing that I love about her is she's not just tanky and hard to kill because she does heal herself. She doesn't heal allies, but she's just basically, she can be down at 1 HP, have 4 enemies around her, and she can pretty much top herself off with using one main skill. It's ridiculous. But on top of that, she also does, her main skill actually does damage based on enemies' max HP, which once you start pushing higher and higher deficits, it's going to be more reliable damage as opposed to attack scaling stuff, which, you know, if the enemies get bigger stats, it's harder to do. You're always going to do that fixed amount. So in like the first 5 chapters, her damage is very negligible because other things just one-shot units. But once you get into those, you know, like chapters 6 to 9, her damage is actually quite respectable. Now, on top of that, she shields her entire team, which is fantastic. So the great thing about her is if you got other characters leveled further than her, she can still sit in the front row and soak up a ton of damage and not really care about it and just basically survive, plus provide that shielding, plus provide some steady damage input. So absolutely fantastic. I love Petra. Then we have Talia. Talia is, to me, another copy of Adrienne. Her healing isn't actually that crazy, but it's more the supportive buffing and energy recharge that she brings on top of the damage with her ultimate skill. Now, she's an interesting one. I feel like if her ultimate didn't do damage, she'd be a balanced character sitting in A to S tier. But because she also can do damage in the early game, it makes her just so crazy for that early game phase of it, because you can power level her and then she's going to keep your team topped off with the healing. And on top of that, she's going to deal nice damage and also get more main skills across the board. She's just really solid. Like I said, she feels like a very similar version to Adrienne, but obviously Adrienne brings more of the tanking side and a bit more damage, whereas she brings the basically the mana regeneration. Then we have Vivian. Now, Vivian's an interesting one. If you don't use her for her ult, she doesn't deal a hell of a lot of damage unless enemies are lined up for her main skill, because her main skill's in a line. She does bring the speed or haste, whatever you want to call it, which is the huge thing for her. But the other thing is, if you do her ult, especially in like the second or third ult of the game when she's fully stacked, it can deal massive amounts of damage. She can just like wipe boards essentially. She can deal insane damage. She brings the haste. That's what she's in this tier 4. It's just splashable. You can put her in any team pretty safely. Now, next up we have Catherine in S tier. So let's go through S tier. Catherine is a very niche one. She pairs incredibly well with Dora. And besides that, she's not a splashable unit, as in unless it's a very heavy damage stage, if you're not using Dora, then you probably drop her. I use Catherine from time to time, but only on very heavy damage stages. Otherwise, she's not really that necessary, especially when you look at some of these other units like Petra and Talia that are really splashable in teams, and they bring a pretty good sustained core. I also have Adrienne, who just adds to that. So with those three, there is absolutely no need for her unless it's like a crazy damage stage. But she does bring invincibility, which is huge for just ignoring some damage, especially invincibility as we go later into the game is just going to get more and more important. So that is fantastic. She also provides the shielding. She can get some healing and stuff like that, but she's just absolutely amazing. And that invincibility can be so clutch in certain situations. Then we have Chloe. Chloe, free to play. I absolutely love that we get Chloe free to play. I love it that they give us her free to play and then Talia for a $1 pack. Like, honestly, great free/cheap units to get. Chloe has the taunt, which is fantastic, and it happens so early. So even things like fighting against an enemy Adrienne who pulls one of your units in, she can taunt the Adrienne so that she gets dragged in. And then same thing with maybe the enemy has some assassins. She just taunts the entire battlefield, doesn't care what they are. They don't have to be in proximity. She taunts them and just drags them towards herself. Then she has this amazing passive where the first time she drops low, it's pretty much impossible to kill her. Now, she's not invincible. She just recovers a lot of HP and gets good defensive stats. She can die through it, but very rarely will that happen. Chloe, absolutely fantastic, splashable in just about any team, and really good for countering those certain matchups. Then we have Dora. Now, Dora does start seeing more usage from what I've seen, like in like the sort of 8 to 9 range, from what I've heard from people. And basically, you pair her with Catherine and Talia. Like I said, I haven't tested Dora myself as a carry, but if you pair her with those two, she just becomes like incredibly tanky. Plus, she gets the shielding and the battery. She reduces her own healing receive, so it's a bit awkward in that sense. But because we got the invincibility and the shielding, she just becomes an absolute savage because she scales her damage so high, and she's super tanky. And then you can keep her alive with these two, and then she just basically melts through the enemy team. So that is her. I'm definitely keen to test her out myself. I have got one copy. I'm not getting much use out of her at the moment, probably because I pushed really high deficit. I'm in chapter 9 already with like level 80 characters, so like I just can't do anything in chapter 9, but I'm definitely going to test her in a bit. Then we have Jacqueline. Now, Jacqueline I absolutely love. I've been using her basically for the first 8 chapters. An amazing assassin. Now, she the one problem that she has is that there's some enemies that just straight counter her and will basically just nuke her and one-shot her, and you can't do much about it. Sometimes she'll survive. If she survives, it's okay. If she doesn't, she's just getting nuked. But as an assassin, she is so fantastic for just killing those back row annoying units. There's just some enemies. There's a rare unit that will lunge at her with the sword and then just like knock her down. The very rare unit with the axe, she'll just jump on her, pound her, and then like that's pretty much game over. But besides besides that, if none of those counters are in there, Jacqueline does a massive amount of damage, and even without using her ultimate, she can still deal insane amounts of damage. Then we have Naya. Now, I tested Naya in like chapter 4, 5, or 6 or something like that, and I didn't get much use out of her, but she starts really shining in chapters like 8 and 9. She just starts to scale better. The thing with Sleep in this game, if you didn't know, she's the Sleep character, is Sleep does not break on contact. Sleep is essentially a stun. So she's really good for that sleeping mechanic. Like I said, I've seen some crazy replays with her. I've got to get back on my other account once I clear 8-35 and try and test her. But yeah, she's been a pivotal one in chapter 10 I've seen for a lot of chapter 10 clears that like I said, Antilla was sharing with me from some of the chapter 10 clears, and she's pretty much in most of them, so that's really interesting, and I'm definitely keen to see. I always think she's going to be one really good late game, but sort of around that chapter 7, 8, 9 is when she starts to excel in the early game as well. Now, moving on to the A tier. Now, Ira in like the first 5 chapters is just an absolute beast. Like, you can't kill her. She self-heals. She one-shots units and everything, but she just falls off with scaling. She doesn't scale too well. By chapter, honestly, I'm still using her in chapter 8 on my account, and she was fine, but from all reports, chapter 9 onwards, she really falls off a lot. So that's unfortunate. I'm really sad about that. I'm still going to build her. I think she's going to be fantastic in PvP later on. But honestly, first 5 chapters, if you just pulled her, just like use her, she'll just clap everything. But then she does start to drop, fade away. Then we have Claire. I've actually not used Claire myself. I know she's an absolute pain in the ass to deal with in campaign stages when she's on the enemy team. She's just super tanky, lives forever, and that's the basic gist. Just a really solid tank in general. Next up, we have Clara. Now, Clara is really cool because she does have a knockback, and the knockback can be so clutch in certain situations. It just changes targeting sequences and stuff like that. She does also bring the healing and stuff like that. But honestly, with Clara, if you've got her, like, just try her once or twice on a stage that you're kind of stuck on, but you feel you're really close. Just the interrupting of the formation with her knockback can really change things. So definitely one worth trying. Then we have Jade. Now, Jade was one that with leaks before the game came out, we thought she was going to let units use their skills more. Instead, if they have a secondary effect that only has a chance to proc, she will help them proc that. But on top of that, she's also got a mind control, which is really, really helpful. And she can actually do some really nice damage with her main and ult. So she's a good unit. If you run her in teams with something like, for instance, Naya, whose sleep is RNG based, like, I feel like those will be really strong endgame teams, but in general, just as a splashable unit, Jade's sitting in the A tier. Then we have Lindsay. Now, Lindsay was one that you get 2 free copies of at base. So she's not bad. One that's not bad to actually go ahead and upgrade if you do get to the 4th copy and you have nothing else to limit break past that. Once again, an assassin, not the same caliber as Jacqueline, because Jacqueline does it at the start of the game and gets that stun. She has to wait until she uses her main skill to go ahead and start assassinating, but still she can do some really nice damage. She's got a bit of stun action as well. But in general, she's not a carry. She can't carry, but she can be a nice little assassin to help you in certain situations. Then we have Mephistopheles. We have Meph. Meph is my mate Nico, who's in I think he's in chapter 12 now. Highly rates her. He did go for her hard on the banner. Basically, she's I feel like she's very comparable to Jade in their role. She does bring a defense shred for the later game. So I think she'll definitely be a very meta boss unit, but it's one that I feel like could get very easily outclassed. So she is the exclusive banner. Not a bad unit at all. Like I said, very good. But just from playing a bunch of these games, I feel like she's like a prime candidate just to get power crept. So that's why I'm not going on her banner, but definitely a solid unit. She's got a really solid lockout for the enemy with the highest attack. And she does some pretty solid damage, like I said, with some defense break and stuff like that. Then we have Mika and Siha. Now, these two, I feel like these two could go right in this bracket in between S and A when you use them together. If you don't use these two together, they drop down to like a C tier. They just lose all their effects. But Mika, I'm just going to talk about them both right now. Mika is a damage dealer, and she can deal really, really solid damage with just without even using her ultimate. She doesn't need to use her ultimate to deal massive damage, but if you do want to use her ultimate, it will deal decent damage and also stun the enemies, which is incredibly nice. And then as the game goes on, she gets more stuns with skill ups. So I think she's going to be definitely one to watch for the future, but definitely in the early game, if you have her and Siha, fantastic secondary damage dealer for your team. And then we also have Siha, who basically just becomes the healer in that team with her, and her heals just feel more impactful than any of the other healers. Like when you use her heal, if you need to use her ultimate for a clutch heal or something like that, it feels like you're actually getting something out of it. But these two together, definitely very, very viable units. Like I said, I could almost slot them into like this in-between section between S and A. Next up, Miriam. Honestly, I've only used her as a mercenary. I can't go too in depth into her myself. A lot of these types of units, in a similar vein to something like Nicole and stuff like that, I feel like they're going to be more useful once we come to bossing, endgame teams and stuff like that. A lot of these ranged units, because they don't offer the extra support, it's hard for me to place them. But yeah, I'm just going to leave that one there. Like I said, I haven't done too much testing. Then we have Rebecca. Rebecca's insane in this early game phase. Once you get into chapter 7, you'll start seeing that you fight a lot more Petras, a lot more Claires as well. And it's just, you get timed out all the time. She brings a heal debuff, so it reduces their healing by 50%. But she also brings an attack and haste buff for the ally furthest away from her. So you can choose your main damage dealer, place them far away on the board. They'll get the attack buff, plus she'll bring the heal block. And in chapter 7 and onwards, she really helps with that annoying stall out phase of the game that happens. Like I said, now we're getting a bit beyond my realm of knowledge. Suni, I'm not too familiar with. I know she's the tank. She's got the extra CC and stuff like that, but I'm not gonna go too in depth into these ones because, like I said, these are ones I haven't had much testing. All I know is Haru is insane in PvP. Like Haru absolutely claps for damage in PvP, but this is more of a PvE tier list. But I definitely want to get Haru and build her up for PvP because it's just absolutely nuts. I also think she's going to be good at endgame PvE as well. Then honestly, Cherry can do some massive single target damage as well. Then we have a Yami. I think I said that right. She's got a really nice mind control. And later on, I feel like she's going to be like really strong in the end game with those bleeds and the stacking damage and then the mind control. And when she... with skill ups, her mind control actually increases the attack of the enemy being mind controlled by 100%, so that when they're mind controlled, they just nuke their own team. It seems like nuts. Now she is a demon, so she's gonna be hard to get. But honestly, I feel like at just that one copy, it could be useful later game with that charm, just to take out an enemy and just make them nuke themselves. I don't know. We'll have to wait and see. Then Nicole, I think Nicole's going to be better later on. Not at the moment. She doesn't bring any support. Just raw damage dealers are hard to slot into teams in the early game. But she does increase allies. In the later game, she'll increase allies' crit damage against enemies. So I think she'll be a good bossing unit. Prim, interesting kind of healer with some solid buffs. I haven't tested her enough to say. Renee, once again, another one of those units that I'm very curious to do more testing on. So I can't really comment on Renee too much. And then there's bottom tier. These are all like the debuff units, which just feel subpar. They don't feel... Your debuff units just don't feel impactful unless it's something like, Jacqueline or something who has bleeds on top of just raw damage. But these ones are more the debuff based units. And in the early game, they just feel too slow. So I think these guys will start to excel in the late game. But that is going to be it, guys. That is the global tier list for the early game. Like I said, jump in here, get over on Pridewind. The other thing with Pridewind is you definitely want to get over here because I enjoy looking at characters here because he's even added in the artifacts to this, because in the game, it's such a nightmare to search the artifacts up. So just doing it on the website is so much easier. But like I said, that's the tier list. This is definitely going to evolve. This is the early game tier list. And then we'll probably, in a month or so, maybe get the mid game tier list out as well. But I have seen one, a Korean tier list. So maybe we'll take a look at that tomorrow. It's currently midnight here, so I'm keen to get to bed. But that is going to be it for this one, guys. Thanks for watching. Hope you have an awesome day, and I look forward to seeing the next one. Cheers.